Anonymity. I don't care if you're white, black, Asian, gay, straight, anything. On the Horror with Marchese and Buller show, we don't discriminate. We have everyone on. If you want to come on, I don't care what you are.
It's all with Marchese and Buller. It's all with Marchese and Buller.
Welcome to Marchese and Buller, and today we're going to be talking about anonymity. I'm editing an anthology for Halloween for Trickster's Treats number 3 with Steve Dillon, and they're giving me the stories. I've gotten, I think, 4 so far, and I think mine is Envy. I have no idea who the authors are. I'm just getting these stories in. I don't really care. I want to know what the story's about. If the story's great, I could care less who the person is. I grew up in the Bronx, and I have a very diverse family, and I don't care who is sending the story in, as long as that story is quality and it's entertaining and it keeps me reading. That's the most important thing. If it's not so great, you can always make suggestions, yada yada, but you get that story core, it's going to shine, right? Mm-hmm. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're white, black, Asian, gay, straight, anything. As long as it's a good story. That's what. But that's what's the good thing about the anonymous submissions. If they really are anonymous, because sometimes they may say that, but they're really not. I can say, whether you believe me or not, I'm truly getting stories without the name on them. So I don't know who's sending these. All I know is that I'm looking at them and making my decisions. Mm-hmm. I think it's a great thing to make people at ease. I don't necessarily believe that it's a big deal, especially today. But some places it may be. And you're going to get places that are discriminatory. You may get places that are really not. Maybe some places can be wrongly accused of being this way. But if you get to a place and you submit to a place that is discriminatory, you don't want to be in that place to begin with. You're going to want to find... Right. You don't want to force your way into that, because then you're going to be dealing with a whole bunch of garbage, and it's just going to be stress on your behalf. So they give you anything, or they say, just like J.K. Rowling, when she submitted her Harry Potter, they suggested she hyphenate her, do the name with the initials. That's discrimination. But in cases like that where it's blatant, most of the times you don't want to deal with something like that. You just want to go to some other publishing house, because you're going to just be putting yourself through a lot of crap. Write, make your writing the best it can be, and it will shine. In the end, you will persevere, especially if you keep doing what you're doing. Keep writing, and just let the story shine. It can be any amount of characters. Where I grew up, I had so many influences. In my first novel, there's going to be a gay black man. There's going to be a guy from the Bronx. Obviously, I was a guy from the Bronx, so but it's not based on me. It's just that's who the characters are. These are what jumped into my head. I'm a fiction writer. I have many black friends. In my family, I have black cousins. I have Puerto Rican cousins. My wife is Puerto Rican. And I'm not writing these characters for any other reason, but these are characters that are in my head, and I want to have these characters come out. You don't have to. You can have whatever kind of character you want. J.K. Rowling, in her book, she had the elves. They actually had a role. They weren't just elves. They were discriminated against, and she did it in a silent sort of way, like a under what do you call that? You know what I'm saying? But what do you think about this?
I think any kind of discrimination in writing is terrible, and it's something that definitely needs to be eradicated from the top down. I think writers and editors, not necessarily at the highest level, are sort of trying to propagate the idea of completely neutral submissions, and in an ideal world, I think that we should have a fair mixture of all different types of people in our anthologies. I think different cultural backgrounds and different upbringings, and even the opposite sex, bring different points of view to a story. I mean, I grew up absolutely in a completely opposite environment to yourself. I was very, white, working class area in the Peak District, the middle of the countryside. I don't think I saw a person of colour till I was about 8 or 9 years old. So it's the opposite, but I'm a firm believer that everyone should have an equal chance. Despite that, I grew up, sort of, some of my favourite stories when I was a kid were the Anansi stories, the ones from Africa about the Spider-Man. And I remember sort of thinking when the headmaster was reading it to us, how strange these worlds were. This Spider-Man, and how he used to tell fables and things like that. And I used to think it's fantastic. So without that African sort of background, without that heritage, I would have never known that. I would have never experienced that. And I think it's enriched me as a person. That said, I think it's really difficult to stop people from discriminating. I think even the best of us discriminate, if not sort of outwardly, like some of the extreme lefts and rights.
Yeah. Sort
of almost on a subconscious level. I think it's really difficult to eradicate it, unfortunately.
Well, and on another note too, you're talking about that there are stories that are universal, that can be for everybody, like those stories, the kid stories. But then there's stories too that it may be, maybe it's something from the hood. Maybe it's like I said, when I grew up in the Bronx, it could be a story about a drug dealer and someone who's into, let's say, army novels. Like what's that one? That's a big one. Born.
Born.
Yeah. So the Born Supremacy, the Born Legacy. Those are great. If you like that kind of novel, you don't want to read, maybe something from the hood. That's what you want to read. If you want to read something from the hood, I mean, I like all kinds of stories. If you have a zombie novel that's in the hood, that'd be crazy, right? But it's like it's what you want to read. Everybody has their own choices.
Well, going back to what you were saying, I think anonymity in terms of submission is one way of eradicating it, in my opinion. It's not tramping down any minority. In my opinion, I don't think it's tramping down any minority. It's basically removing any background, any biography from everyone. Everyone is treated exactly the same.
Yeah.
And then out of that, you pick based on how stories should be picked, on stories that the editor enjoys.
And as if they are doing it that way.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. But I'm thinking if you're trying to eliminate discrimination, that's one way of doing it. It's not tramping down any minorities, and it's not tramping down anyone who's been sort of persecuted. What it is doing is making it everyone on the same level, and it's just all based on the stories. That doesn't solve the problem of higher level discrimination.
Yeah.
This is something that people need to sort of work on a cultural level.
Well, it's another hurdle. It's another hurdle to get through.
Yeah.
And it's another thing that if you pass that hurdle, you're on your way to being a writer.
But like I was saying to you, you pick out the obvious discriminatory factors. Your race, your sex, your age, and your ethnic background. But then there's sort of less obvious things as well. Before the show, I was saying how someone might look at a story and go, "Oh, Gary Buller. My ex was called Jonah Buller." Do you know what I mean? And I don't really like the name Buller, and what a stupid name. And and they might look at my biography, and there might be something in my biography. Who's got 2 kids and a dog? Oh, right, okay. And everyone has their own prejudices in their own little way.
It could be anything.
It could be anything. Yeah. Anonymity. I can't even say the word. That for me isn't a solution. The only time when you shouldn't be doing that, again, as we were saying before the show, was if you have a specific anthology, either for women, or for an all-British anthology, or one where you want a specific cultural taste to it.
Yeah.
Like I was saying about the Anansi stories, an African anthology would be fantastic, But even then, you don't have to turn around and say, if you're not African, you can't come in. If you're not, if you're not British, you can't, you can't submit to British invasion.
Well, let's say, let's say Chris, who comes on the show often. let's say he lived in Britain for like 10 years. He should be able to have a crack at that, because he could write something about Britain from his point of view, and it'd give you a whole
absolutely.
different, perspective of it.
Absolutely. I think in an ideal world, every story gets judged on its own merit and not judged by the sex, age, ethnic background, hair colour of anyone who's submitted it. And in an ideal world, that's great. And if you want a cultural flavour of something else, that's when you put out an anthology and say, we're doing an anthology on Australia.
Yeah.
You don't have to be Australian, but it helps.
And plus, and you want to also say, if you were rejected because the editor doesn't feel that it's a perfect fit for their anthology, that doesn't mean that they hate you or that they're discriminating against you. It just means that your story is not a fit for that anthology. Doesn't mean your story's bad. Your story could be a J.K. Rowling story. She was declined by 10 publishing houses or something. They're probably freaking kicking themselves right now. She's a billionaire,
Absolutely.
And there was also an article about she's a billionaire and Stephen King isn't. He's just a millionaire. And they're saying, is there any difference in their quality of writing? No, she picked something that her audience was YA, but then as they progressed, it went into adult. So her audience is kid, adult, middle age. So she has a wide audience, where Stephen King is horror writer, so he's mostly for adults.
Yeah.
So you have to also think of who you're selling to, and a lot of other things come into play. But on the Horror with Marchese and Buller show, we don't discriminate. We have everyone on. If you want to come on, I don't care what you are. You can come on this show. Just let us know.
You're
say,
very
look,
serious there.
let us know. We want to know what you think about this subject. Gary, you got something?
I'm more interested in sort of most of the other sort of episodes we've done, people's opinions on this. You might think I'm wrong on the anonymity thing. I'd love to hear, if so, why.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear your opinions on diversity within short story publishing game, and I'd love to hear what you think. Do you think you've been discriminated against? Have you been discriminated against? I'd love to hear from some people who think they've been rejected on anything other than the quality of the story or the fact that it doesn't fit.
Do you agree? Do you not agree with us? I mean, do you agree there is diversity? Do you agree there isn't? Do you think we want to know what you think? And guess what?
See you next time. Look at Gary. Oh God. No, see, I feel it's fun.
It's all with Marchese and Buller. It's all with Marchese and Buller.
Mine is Envy, and
I'm really jealous.
see, that's a perfect story for Envy. And there were a bunch of Envy, and I have no idea who the authors are. I'm just getting these stories in. Are you doing the Numa Numa dance?
No.
Man. Oh my god.
Sorry, go on. English.
I'm like 27% English, but with Stephen Buller.
Steve Dillon.
Anonymity? I might be saying this wrong.
Anonymity.
Anonymity. When you submit, okay, so how do I say this?
you know, I think. Hang on, cut.
Yeah.
Water
break. Wait.
A water break. I was about to say because if you